Shadow Protocol. For 6 centuries, the galactic hegemony had maintained absolute control over the known universe. Their massive fleets patrolled every major trade route, their orbital cannons loomed over thousands of subjugated worlds, and their enforcers extracted resources from countless species. Their technological superiority was unquestioned, until humanity decided to change the rules of engagement. Grand Marshal Corvin stood on the command deck of the indomitable Will, the most powerful dreadnought in the hegemony's armada. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back as he gazed at the holographic display of hegemony territory, a vast sea of conquered worlds spanning 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. "Marshal, we've detected unusual activity in Sector 9, reported Sub-Commander Velks, her eye stalks quivering slightly. "The mining colony on Nexus IV has gone silent." Corvin's scaled face remained impassive. "Nexus IV? Near the quarantine zone?" "Yes, Marshal. Near the human system." Corvin flicked a dismissive hand. "Humans. Primitive apes barely capable of reaching their own moon when we found them. Send a patrol squadron to investigate. Nothing more." "As you command," Velks replied, slithering away to relay the orders. Corvin returned his attention to the galactic map. The human system was hardly worth noticing, a single yellow star with an insignificant blue planet. When hegemony scout ships had discovered Earth 80 years ago, they'd found a fractured civilization still burning fossil fuels. The High Council had deemed them unworthy of conquest or enslavement, simply establishing a quarantine field around their system and leaving them to develop in isolation. A footnote in the grand history of the hegemony. The Marshal's complacency would prove fatal. Deep within the asteroid belt of humanity's solar system, hidden beneath the cratered surface of Ceres, lay Earth's greatest secret. The underground facility stretched for kilometers, built over decades by a unified Earth coalition formed after first contact with the hegemony. Inside the largest chamber stood humanity's response to cosmic imprisonment, the ECS Wraith. The warship didn't gleam like hegemony vessels. Its hull was composed of a revolutionary material that absorbed rather than reflected light, appearing as a slice of absolute darkness against the stars. Its silhouette was sleek and predatory, unlike the bulky, ostentatious designs of the hegemony fleet. Commander Ilara Reeves strode through the final inspection corridor, her eyes scanning the ship that represented humanity's defiance. At 43, she had spent half her life preparing for this mission. Her close-cropped silver hair framed a face etched with determination, a determination shared by every member of the carefully selected crew. "Final systems check complete, Commander," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson Chen, her executive officer. "The quantum displacement drive is operating at optimal parameters." Ilara nodded, her expression solemn. "And the phase-shifted weaponry. All arrays fully charged and calibrated. We can bypass hegemony shielding as projected. Project Lazarus. Ready for deployment at your command." Ilara took a deep breath. For 80 years, humanity had studied the energy barrier enclosing their system, reverse engineering the technology from the minimal contact they'd had with the hegemony. For 80 years, they had developed weapons and defenses that operated on principles the hegemony had never considered. For 80 years, they had prepared to break free. "It's time," she said simply, turning to address the assembled crew on the hangar deck. 100 of Earth's finest scientists, engineers, tacticians, and soldiers stood at attention. Each understood the gravity of their mission. They weren't just explorers or warriors. They were humanity's first strike against an empire that had imprisoned their species. "Today, we take our first steps beyond the quarantine," Ilara declared, her voice echoing across the chamber. "The hegemony believes us primitive, contained, harmless. They're about to learn how dangerous a cornered species can become. We carry with us not just the hopes of Earth, but its ingenuity, its adaptability, and its refusal to accept confinement. The Wraith is more than a ship. It's humanity's declaration that we will not be caged." The crew boarded in disciplined silence, each taking their assigned stations. Ilara settled into the command chair on the bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing every system of the ship and the space beyond. "Quantum displacement drive engaging," announced Lieutenant Sophia Patil at the helm. "Preparing to phase through the quarantine barrier." Unlike conventional propulsion systems, the quantum displacement drive didn't push the ship through space. It shifted the ship between quantum states, effectively allowing it to exist in multiple locations simultaneously before resolving at the desired coordinates. The technology had been developed based on theoretical physics papers published before the quarantine, refined through decades of secret research. "Displacement in 3, 2, 1. Mark." Sophia counted down. The Wraith shimmered, seeming to blur at the edges as it phased partially out of conventional reality. The quarantine barrier, designed to block physical objects and energy signatures, failed completely against a vessel that existed in a quantum superposition. "Barrier passage successful," Sophia reported, a hint of awe in her voice. "We're beyond the quarantine, Commander." For the first time in 80 years, a human-built vessel had left the confines of the solar system. "Set course for the Nexus IV mining colony," Ilara ordered. "Maximum stealth protocols. Let's introduce ourselves to the hegemony." The Wraith accelerated silently through the void, its revolutionary propulsion system leaving no energy wake to detect. The hegemony, with all its vaunted technology, had no idea that their carefully maintained status quo was about to shatter. 3 days later, the Wraith entered the Nexus system, approaching the mining colony that had gone silent. The crew operated with precise efficiency, sensors extended to gather intelligence on hegemony operations. "Commander," called out Lieutenant Rajiv Das from the sensor station, "I'm detecting a hegemony patrol squadron in orbit around Nexus IV. 3 cruisers and a command carrier." Ilara studied the tactical display. "What's their status?" "They appear to be conducting a standard investigation. No elevated alert." "Perfect." Ilara's lips curved into a grim smile. "Battle stations. Prepare phase cannons. Target the command carrier first." The crew moved with practiced precision, activating systems that had until now only been used in simulation. The Wraith's weapons were unlike anything in the hegemony arsenal. Based on the same quantum principles as the drive system, they could phase partially out of conventional spacetime, bypassing shields designed to block energy in normal space. "Phase cannons charged and locked on target," reported Lieutenant Commander Maya Rodriguez, the tactical officer. "Ready on your command." Ilara leaned forward in her chair. "Let them know humanity has arrived." "Fire." The Wraith remained completely invisible as beams of concentrated energy, visible only as faint distortions in space, lanced out toward the hegemony command carrier. The massive vessel's shields registered no incoming attack until the energy resolved inside their protective bubble, materializing directly against the hull. The carrier's midsection erupted in a spectacular explosion, spreading outward as secondary systems failed catastrophically. Before the other cruisers could respond, the Wraith had already shifted position and fired again, methodically crippling each vessel with surgical precision. "All hegemony vessels neutralize," Maya reported, her voice steady despite the historic significance of what they had just achieved. "Minimal life support remains on 2 cruisers. The carrier and 1 cruiser are complete losses." "Open a channel to the surviving ships," Ilara ordered. The main view screen activated, showing the bridge of one of the damaged cruisers. A hegemony officer, his exoskeleton cracked and leaking fluid, stared in disbelief at the human face on his communication panel. "This is Commander Ilara Reeves of the Earth Coalition ship Wraith," she announced, her voice firm and controlled. "Your quarantine of humanity has ended. We have neutralized your squadron as a demonstration of our capabilities. This is only the beginning." The hegemony officer's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "Impossible. Humans are primitive. You cannot possess such technology." "Your misconception is the first of many that will fall today," Ilara replied. "Transmit this message to your leaders. Humanity will no longer be confined. The quarantine ends, or the hegemony begins to fall, one ship at a time. She signaled for the communication to be cut. Deploy Project Lazarus to the mining colony, then prepare to jump to our next target. Hours later, on the hegemony throne world of Apex Prime, Grand Marshal Corvin stood before the High Council, 6 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The chamber, normally illuminated by subtle golden light, now pulsed with angry red emergency indicators. "You're certain these were humans?" asked High Counselor Zex, her crystalline form refracting the light into scattered patterns. "The evidence is irrefutable," Corvin admitted. "They identified themselves after destroying a command carrier and 3 cruisers with technology we've never encountered. Our sensors detected nothing until the attack was already underway." "Impossible," thundered Counselor Mograx, slamming his massive fist against the table. "They were burning hydrocarbons when we found them. How could they develop such technology in mere decades?" "We underestimated them," said Counselor Sylph, her voice a whispering breeze. "A catastrophic error." High Counselor Zex's faceted eyes narrowed. "And what of Nexus IV? What happened to the mining colony?" Corvin hesitated, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly. The humans deployed some kind of technology to the subjugated workers. Within hours, the slaves had overthrown their overseers and declared independence. They're calling it Project Lazarus, a reference to an ancient human myth about rising from the dead. Silence fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. The hegemony maintained control not just through military might, but through the belief that resistance was futile. If word spread that humans had successfully attacked hegemony ships and liberated a colony. "Find this ship," Zex finally ordered, her voice cold. "Destroy it. Make an example of these humans, and any who support them. The hegemony cannot tolerate such defiance." But even as the orders went out, reports were already coming in of another attack. A hegemony research facility had gone dark, its valuable technological secrets presumably now in human hands. The Wraith was nowhere to be found, vanishing between attacks like a nightmare that couldn't be caught. And with each successful strike, humanity's legend grew, sparking hope in species that had known only submission for centuries. The Shadow War had begun, turning the tide. Grand Admiral Xerxes, Supreme Commander of the hegemony's military forces, stood before the tactical hologram with his 4 arms tightly clenched. For 3 months, the human vessel Wraith had conducted a devastating campaign against hegemony installations across 5 sectors. Each attack followed the same pattern. The ship would appear without warning, neutralize all resistance with weapons that bypassed shields as if they didn't exist, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. 26 attacks, Xerxes growled, his scaled skin darkening with rage. 17 outposts, 5 research facilities, 3 shipyards, and a command base, all compromised or destroyed by a single human vessel. His aide, a tall, spindly Arcturian, shifted nervously. "The High Council demands results, Admiral. The disruptions are spreading." Disruptions, a mild term for what was becoming the greatest crisis in 6 centuries of hegemony rule. After each attack, the humans deployed their Project Lazarus, technology that allowed subjugated species to overcome their neural inhibitors and rise up against their overseers. Already, 12 systems had declared independence, forming a loose coalition with humanity at its center. "We've allocated 1/3 of the entire fleet to hunting the Wraith," Xerxes said. 400 warships, and still this human vessel eludes us. Their quantum technology. He stopped abruptly, aware he was revealing too much of his frustration. "We've developed a new detection grid," his aide offered. "By linking the sensor arrays of multiple vessels, we might be able to detect their quantum fluctuations before they fully materialize." Xerxes nodded curtly. "Deploy it immediately, and prepare the annihilator. If we cannot catch this human pest, we will force it to come to us." On board the Wraith, Commander Ilara Reeves studied the latest intelligence reports with a grim satisfaction. The ship had just completed its 27th strike, liberating a hegemony processing center where the insectoid Canteri were being harvested for their neural enzymes. Project Lazarus deployed successfully, reported Lieutenant Commander Chen. The Canteri have seized control of the facility. That makes 13 liberated species now allied with Earth. Ilara nodded, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. The past 3 months had taken their toll. The constant vigilance, the high-risk operations, the weight of knowing that humanity's future hung on their actions. Yet they had achieved more than anyone could have imagined. New intelligence coming in, announced Lieutenant Das from Communications. The hegemony is moving their super dreadnought, the Annihilator, to the Veritas system. There, he paused, his expression darkening. They're threatening to sterilize the planet Veritas II if the Wraith doesn't surrender. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Veritas II was home to over 4 billion sentient beings, one of the most populous worlds in that sector. "It's a trap," said Maya Rodriguez, stating what everyone already knew. "They can't catch us, so they're forcing our hand." Ilara's fingers tapped a rhythmic pattern on the arm of her command chair, a habit when she was deep in thought. "Contact our allies in the coalition. I want every scrap of intel on the Annihilator, and get me a secure channel to Earth Command." Hours later, the senior officers gathered in the tactical room. Holographic projections displayed the Annihilator from multiple angles, a massive vessel nearly 10 kilometers long, bristling with weapon emplacements and surrounded by a fleet of support ships. "The Annihilator has planet-killing capabilities," Chen explained. "Their ultimatum is credible. They'll arrive at Veritas II in 48 hours. We can't abandon those people," said Sophia Patel, her voice quiet but firm. Ilara studied the projections. "We won't, but we're not going to play by their rules either." She turned to Dr. Aisha Nagata, the ship's chief scientist. "Doctor, you've been analyzing the hegemony's quantum detection grid. What have you found?" Aisha adjusted her glasses, a relic from Earth she preferred to corrective procedures. "They're attempting to detect our quantum displacement signature, but they're looking for patterns based on our previous attacks. If we modified our phase harmonics, we could appear to be multiple ships." Ilara finished the thought. "A phantom fleet." "Precisely. Combined with the data we've gathered on their communication protocols, we could create considerable confusion in their command structure." Ilara nodded slowly, a plan forming. "We won't just confront the Annihilator. We'll turn the hegemony's greatest weapon against them." She looked around at her officers. "It's time to call in every ally we've made. This ends at Veritas." The next 48 hours were a flurry of activity as the Wraith coordinated with the growing coalition of liberated worlds. Ships of various designs and capabilities, many formerly belonging to the hegemony before their crews rebelled, converged on predetermined coordinates near the Veritas system. None were as advanced as the Wraith, but together they formed the first multi-species fleet to challenge hegemony dominance in centuries. Ilara addressed the captains of the coalition vessels via secure quantum communication. "Our strategy depends on precise timing and coordination. The Wraith will engage the Annihilator directly. When we give the signal, your ships will emerge from hyperspace at these coordinates." The tactical display highlighted positions surrounding the hegemony fleet. "Remember, this isn't just about saving Veritas II. It's about showing the galaxy that the hegemony can be defeated." As the deadline approached, the Annihilator took position above Veritas II, its massive form casting a shadow across the planet's northern continent. Grand Admiral Xerxes stood on the command deck, surrounded by the most advanced technology in the hegemony arsenal. "No sign of the human vessel," reported his sensor officer. "The detection grid is fully operational." Xerxes nodded, his expression coldly satisfied. "Open a channel to the planet." The main view screen activated, showing the frightened faces of the Veritas Leadership Council. Tall, elegant beings with luminescent skin. "Your time is running out," Xerxes announced without preamble. "Either the human ship surrenders, or your world burns. You have 1 hour to comply." He cut the transmission with a dismissive gesture. Maintain alert status. The humans will come. And come they did, but not as expected. The Wraith emerged from quantum displacement not near Veritas II, but directly alongside the Annihilator itself, appearing so close that defensive systems had no time to react. Target locked. Maya Rodriguez called out on the Wraith's bridge, firing phase cannons. Beams of energy phased through the super dreadnought's supposedly impenetrable shields, materializing inside to strike critical systems. Secondary explosions bloomed along the massive vessel's length. Direct hits on primary power conduits and command systems, Maya reported. They're temporarily crippled. Ilara leaned forward. Initiate Phantom protocols and transmit the signal to our allies. Then prepare Project Lazarus Ultimate for deployment. The Wraith began shifting its quantum signature rapidly, creating the sensor impression of dozens of identical vessels appearing and disappearing around the hegemony fleet. Simultaneously, the Coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace, surrounding the hegemony forces. On the damaged bridge of the Annihilator, chaos reigned. Multiple Wraith signatures detected, shouted the sensor officer. Enemy fleet emerging from hyperspace. Xerxes stared in disbelief at the tactical display. Impossible. How could they? His words cut off as the communication system activated without command. Commander Ilara Reeves appeared on every screen throughout the hegemony fleet. This message is for every being serving the hegemony. For centuries, you have enforced an empire built on subjugation and fear. Today that ends. As she spoke, specially designed quantum transmitters attached to key points of the hegemony ships activated, broadcasting a modified version of Project Lazarus, a signal that disrupted the neural control implants used to ensure the loyalty of many hegemony troops. We offer you a choice, Ilara continued. Join our coalition of free worlds, or stand with a dying empire. The neural controls that have bound you are failing. For the first time in your service, the choice is truly yours. Throughout the hegemony fleet, confusion turned to revelation as thousands of troops and officers found themselves free of compulsion for the first time in their lives. On dozens of ships, crews turned against their commanders. On others, civil conflict erupted between those embracing freedom and those loyal to the hegemony. Grand Admiral Xerxes watched in horror as his grand fleet dissolved into chaos. What have you done? He demanded as security forces on his own bridge began to turn their weapons on each other. We've done what you feared most, Ilara replied. We've given people a choice. Within hours, the Battle of Veritas had ended, not with the destruction of fleets, but with the collapse of hegemony authority as ship after ship declared for the coalition. The Annihilator, designed to be the ultimate symbol of hegemony power, became instead the site where the peace accord was signed. 1 month later, delegates from over 50 species gathered on Earth, the quarantine barrier now permanently disabled. The Galactic Coalition Charter established a new order, one based on mutual respect and cooperation rather than dominance. Commander Ilara Reeves, now Admiral Reeves, stood at the podium in the United Nations Assembly Hall, addressing representatives from across the galaxy. When the hegemony found us 80 years ago, they dismissed humanity as primitive and contained us like specimens in a zoo, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. They failed to understand a fundamental truth about our species. Humanity does not accept cages. We adapt, we innovate, and we persevere. She gazed out at the assembled delegates, former enemies now allies, former slaves now equals. The Wraith was built to break our chains, but what we've created together is something far greater. A coalition of free worlds united not by force, but by choice. The shadows of empire have retreated, and in their place, a new dawn rises. As applause filled the hall, Ilara thought of the long journey that had brought them here, from quarantined prisoners of their own solar system to architects of a new galactic order. The hegemony had never understood the danger of underestimating humanity. They had contained what they should have feared, dismissed what they should have respected. And in the end, that mistake had cost them an empire.